times of sharing during ASEAN.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to Durian ASEAN. You're with Grace.
Hi, this is Gowri.
So we are at ASEAN Dailies. We deliver news from Southeast Asia. Let's talk about what's been going on, especially in European countries, Gowri. It's about the migrants. It's when it comes to refugee issues, it's not only in Southeast Asia that we've been talking about, especially Rohingyas and also Bangladeshi. But then when it comes to migrant crisis, there is also hundreds and thousands of people flooding into Germany recently. And then apparently there is an update regarding this migrant crisis in Europe. So apparently hundreds of migrants have broken through police lines on Hungary's border with Serbia, and they are walking towards the capital, which is the Budapest. And apparently according to the BBC video, they've taken this footage of people walking on the highway, and those hundreds of people try to escape and to find their own land to settle in.
And Hungary has also actually become a flashpoint as thousands of migrants and refugees from the Middle East and Africa move north to claim asylum in Germany and other countries. And it seems that the UK has also opened up to accept at least 20,000 refugees from Syria over the next 5 years, according to their Prime Minister David Cameron. And even Greece and the UN Refugee Agency have brought in extra staff and ships to deal with about 25,000 migrants as well on the island of Lesbos. And Spanish media say police actually fired rubber bullets at migrants in a detention center in Valencia after 50 of them tried to escape. That's not very friendly of the Spanish. And finally police in Macedonia actually scuffled with thousands of migrants trying to cross into the country from Greece. So we can see a very mixed reactions from a lot of the countries. Of course, Angela Merkel from Germany spoke out against this yesterday, saying that Europe cannot turn its back on the refugee crisis, and there's been a lot of criticism on the Islamic countries surrounding Syria as well, because they are not opening their doors, and yet they are the closest ones to Syria. And this has definitely not just become a Middle East crisis, it's become a global crisis now.
That's very true.
Like you were mentioning as well, when we had the refugee crisis over here in Southeast Asia, we had other countries opening up the door for us, not for us, for the refugees,
right,
so that they can go there, that they have some place to be. And it's nice to see a few countries doing that right now, because they really, really need help, and they don't have a choice. They don't have anywhere else to go.
Exactly. But after all, what's really necessary and needed is the core problem and why these people are just fleeing away from their own country. But it is good that Germany has a step forward to help out all these people. And in fact, they have lots of plans. They want to help out these refugees, such as building more institutions and also shelters for them to stay, even though it's just temporarily. But at the same time, my question here is, all these countries in Europe need to help Germany. Germany's popularity when it comes to saving these refugees is rising, but at the same time, how far and then how long can Germany afford more to save all these people?
Well, I think they won't be they won't be alone for too long, because apparently Pope Francis has also urged Europe's Catholic churches to host these refugees.
Yep.
And he has implored Catholic institutions throughout Europe on Sunday to show mercy to the flood of refugees arriving on their shores by offering them shelter.
Right.
And according to him, may every parish, every religious community, every monastery, every sanctuary of Europe host a family starting from the Diocese of Rome, Francis said at the end of his Angelus prayers in Rome.
And just to add more updates about the refugees in Europe, Germany designates all EU states plus Ghana, Senegal, Serbia, Macedonia, and Bosnia-Herzegovina as safe countries of origin, which means these asylum claims from nationals of these countries are likely to be rejected. And we also need to discuss what are the supports that asylum seekers are offered. They are asked to stay at the reception centers for up to 6 weeks and a maximum of 3 months. And after that, they offered either just the communal accommodations or housed individually and depending on the policy of a federal states as well. So those are the small requirements that have been provided to asylum seekers. But then again, the questions are just endless, whether they are allowed to work, and then where else they can go after the maximum of the 3 months of staying in one country, and then whether the countries in Europe they have experienced in extending the stay of migrants, and as well as we're supporting them.
That's true, and also the future of them, of course, is uncertain, as in what they're going to do in the country, how long are they going to be there, and are they going to be there and pretty much become a resident, or will they have a separate programs for them? But I think the most important thing right now is I hope more countries will open up their doors and accept these refugees, because there's been a lot of pictures of children dying because they have no place to go, and some of them just get washed up in the ocean. It's really sad.
It is very sad, and also it is indeed a crisis in Europe when it comes to migrant and also refugees. So we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll deliver news on the political side of Southeast Asia. So stay tuned.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. We are at the ASEAN Dailies. We deliver news from Southeast Asia. Now, we are at the political side where we wanted to discuss on the Singapore's recent political sort of matters. And then Singapore rulers hoped a nudge to the left will keep voters loyal, apparently. And then the PAP, the party, can no longer take the popular loyalty for granted. The party's share of the vote dropped to 60.1% in the last election in 2011, and it's the lowest ever, and its swing of just a few thousand votes in some electoral districts this time could erode the overwhelming majority in an 89-seat parliament.
I think it's a very interesting issue here, because usually when a particular party has run the country for a very long time, they do tend to get very comfortable, and they do take the people's loyalty for granted, because they have been in power for so long, and they just sort of operate on that autopilot, like, we're going to win the next election, we're going to win the next election. And I think that's when they start getting comfortable, and they probably don't really deliver all their promises to the people, and that's when the people are also like, you know what, maybe we need a change. We don't want the same parties anymore. And I think that's exactly what's happening with Singapore at the moment, that they are trying to give the ruling party a wake-up call, and trying to show them that you will not always be in the majority. You don't always have an automatic win. At the end of the day, it all goes back to the people and what they want and what is their decision for the country.
That's very true, Gowri. And at the same time, people, we are also sort of making, we are getting smarter in a way, that with that all those recent events in Singapore or wherever we keep ourselves updated, and then to what's happening to the government. So of course, when it comes to elections, any event or huge sort of event in one government or a nation, people know who to choose and who to vote. So even though voters may be very loyal to certain parties, but because of all this access to the information, we also have our own freedom to raise our voices. So the government really need to listen to people and also be able to act accordingly to how people react towards the government. So apparently, in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, there was a lot of emphasis on the private sectors, and it's also from the 07, the Riotic has shifted to a center-left positions, and it's according to the Singapore law and the foreign minister Shanmugam.
And the PAP will also now have to deal with stronger pressure for populist policies, such as higher taxes for a larger swath of income earners, and also nationalistic manpower policy, as well as more social spending, and all of which are very often the antithesis of the ruling party's core policies for the past 50 years. And I think some of the other issues that they're not too happy about is the widening wealth gap between the society, and also resentment over the open door policy for foreign workers, overcrowded trains, expensive housing. All this has actually forced PAP, the People Actions Party, to respond with a huge nudge to the political left. So unless they work really, really hard, they might not secure their usual number of seats in the parliament.
And this is very exciting at the same time to see who will be the next leader of Singapore, and also that depends a lot on the people's vote, of course. And hope that we see the true leader coming up in Singapore, because Singapore is still a great example when it comes to Southeast Asia. So,
another interesting thing about Singapore is that opinion polls are actually illegal. It's hard to find any opinion pieces or anyone coming forward to make any predictions about the outcome of the elections as well.
So hope that we received some positive news from these upcoming elections in Singapore. And let's move on to this migrant issue. We did mention shortly in the breaking news and updates at our first segment, and then we mentioned about the Pope Francis urging his concerns towards the migrants. At the same time, when we come to Malaysia, Malaysian migrants boat tragedy toll, it hits about 50, which means that it's according to Malaysian rescuers, they have recovered the bodies of 35 more Indonesian migrants that were killed when their boat sank 3 days ago, and then they're taking the toll in the disaster to 50 already.
And officials have said that the overcrowded wooden boat capsized and sank in rough seas about 16 kilometers off the coast of central Malaysia's Selangor state before the dawn on Thursday. And these people were actually leaving Malaysia to return to Indonesia, and they were trying to do it by going across the Malacca Straits. And I think this is another issue that has happened a few times. We have had to hear from President Jokowi on how he feels about this incident, because he has also spoken up against Indonesian workers in Malaysia and other Southeast Asian countries who are not being treated well, not being given their rights. I mean, even in this case, the fact that they had to leave in the middle of the night on a boat shows that they were not here by legal means, and they did not have the sufficient documents to go back to their country. And it's another tragedy that has happened. Like you mentioned, about 50 people has died so far. And I think Malaysia and Indonesia really need to have some sort of understanding when it comes to handling Indonesian workers in Malaysia particularly.
Yes, and at the same time, Joko Widodo, he has put his lot of effort to strengthen this maritime and also the security there. And now he even ordered to bombard the whole boat and the ship before. So that's how that he wants to really put his focus when it comes to the security there. And the traveling in the midnight, of course, first it's not safe. Second, it's really easily be assumed that it's not traveling on the illegal basis. So a lot of assumption can be taken out from there. And having this disaster to up at the 50 already, it is a tragedy in Southeast Asia. But then these are some of the parts that we really need to look at, and perhaps come up with the better policies and the better regulations to make sure that people travel, but then there should be a checkpoint or should be another security point to make sure that this wouldn't happen again in this region.
Or they can just make sure that the employer doesn't confiscate their passport so they can go back.
That's a very good point, Gowri. Well, talking about the employees, the government factories downsized in response to minimum wage, meaning that at least one factory has shut down and the several other have, of course, reduced their workforces and cut allowances, which sounds a bit unfair.
Yeah, and I think all these big companies, they're just being dramatic, if I may, because, I mean, the people in these countries, they have actually asked for a minimum wage just to increase a little bit, especially in Myanmar. And I don't think that it's really that much of a problem for them to pay the US $2.80 per as a minimum wage for the workers, because they are actually making millions and millions of money. And just because there was a call for minimum wage which was approved, and now they are shutting down their factories in these respective countries.
Well, this is very sort of quite sad news to all those workers there. And then you mentioned about the wage minimum wage amount, and the current wage law also has its critics among labor activists as well. Some garment factories in the Megalodon industrial zone have stopped providing meal even, and then some no longer provide ferry services. Some have increased their workload, and some workers have quit their own volition because of these changes. And of course, these are all consequences after what happened. But these workers, they wouldn't ask for more. They just want to work and then sustain the livings. And if they are treated unfairly, and even worse than that, I mean, what's there to expect?
Right. And I do think that it's very unfair for them, just because there was a increase in minimum wage. You stop providing meals, you stop providing the usual services that they have been giving to their workers. I mean, as it is, their condition is really bad. They are making pregnant women and children work in the factories, and now they are just making it worse by increasing the workload that some people, like you mentioned, even just quit because they cannot take it anymore. Then there should be a proper balance here. I'm sure they can work out an understanding to see what is what the workers can still get for the amount of wage that they're getting from these factories.
That's true. Well, let's move on to one last news before we have a short break, which is about the haze problem. I mean, in Malaysia also for the past few days, it's been very foggy, and even, I feel very unsafe to even breathe in and breathe out.
That's true. I mean, even this morning when I walked out of my apartment and I could barely see the sky. And the first thing I was thinking is, why are we still going to work? Why has there nothing been said? And I think that's what Jokowi is also saying, that declare emergency if haze reaches dangerous level. I think it is we're halfway there already. It is a pretty dangerous level, like you said. I even feel guilty when I breathe in and out because it's that bad.
Yeah, it is very bad. And he has also ordered the National Agency for Disaster Management, Indonesia National Army, Police of Indonesian Republic, and local government to conduct haze emergency operations in affected areas. And Indonesia is huge, and I just imagine how all these districts and also areas are affected and the population there. So that's when he has declared, and also to check again and again about on the dangerous level of haze. But when it comes to Malaysia, we also need to do something, isn't it, Gowri? Because we can't just let people walk around and just breathe in all this unhealthy
especially
air.
if it comes to someone who's already having some heart disease or some respiratory problem, or even kids who are going to school, and even adults. I mean, it affects pretty much everybody. And in Indonesia, they already have a few schools and airports that were closed due to this haze, and I think that the same should be done in Malaysia as well, especially right now. I mean, I think the condition is pretty bad in Penang as well, and in KL, and hopefully we get a few days off until the situation gets better.
Well, it is true. When I traveled to Penang, I could barely see the beauty of the Penang Bridge there because of haze. So, I mean, we are not asking for public holidays, but we're asking for the better treatment when it comes to haze, because this is a serious problem. So it's something the government really, really needs to look at. So we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll deliver news on the economic side of Southeast Asia. So stay tuned.
ASEAN Dailies, first and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to Durian ASEAN. You're with Grace.
And this is Gowri.
And we are at ASEAN Dailies. We deliver news from Southeast Asia. So let's focus on, our nation, Malaysia. Apparently, there will be more malls next year, about 40. That's the number.
And I don't know if that's a good news, but I have seen a lot of negative reactions on Facebook saying that we do not really want to indulge in this mall culture. There's been a lot of criticisms even in the past. One thing is that most of these malls don't even give or allow much outlets from local local entrepreneurs. They give more priority to international brands, especially from France.
That's
Italian,
very true.
And all. And I think even British India lodged a complaint a few months back because they were forced out of pavilion or something, if I remember correctly.
They were forced.
That's right. And now we are having 40 more malls in KL, and I think a lot of parents have also voiced their discontent that this is not the kind of culture that they want their kids to grow up in, the mall culture.
Like you mentioned, the question is it necessary? And with the dramatic drops in the ringgit value, having more malls really boost up the economic growth in Malaysia. That's another question. And apparently, no, like we mentioned before, at least 40 malls are expected to enter the market in the Greater Kuala Lumpur next year, making the retail sector extremely competitive. But I don't know how we can trust when it comes to extremely competitiveness in Malaysia. And then Someway Putra Place, for instance, offers a hotel and also office components because it is located next to Putra World Trade Center, and also trade shows have provided them with a good traffic. And it comes with their own reasons why they want to establish and build more malls in Kuala Lumpur. But then having more malls would mean that it will be more congested, isn't it?
That's true, and they will have more people crowding the shopping malls instead of other places like the park or the library or other places. Or,
exactly.
Theaters or art festivals. And we want the crowd to pretty much go everywhere instead of all being segregated. Instead of all being centered at shopping malls. And as it is, KL already has a huge number of malls and people.
That's very true.
Anytime that you go to any of these malls, even on a weekend, it will be impossible to even get parking. And I think usually we're driving around thinking, where did all these people come from? Why are they all here? And I think with 40 more malls, I don't know if it might make it better because they have more places to go instead of all going to one particular mall. But it goes back to the question of what does it do to people? How, especially when it comes to kids, when that becomes a routine for them to keep going to the shopping mall instead of other places, how does that affect them as well growing up? And how will their mentality turn out?
Well, because of that, apparently there's also similar news news in Vietnam that even though when it comes to economical status in that nation, they are far behind of a few countries in ASEAN, but then they spend big on the luxury goods apparently. And Vietnam is like 30 or 35 years behind South Korea, 25 behind Malaysia, and also 5 to 7 years behind Indonesia and the Philippines. And then though being the least developed economy in ASEAN, like I mentioned before, Vietnam is still a big luxury goods consumer.
And they have the most luxury car brands in the country, with the GDP per capita just a little above $2,000 per annum. That will be, say, about 8,000 ringgit in Malaysia. And they are driving Bugattis, which is the fastest car in the world. They have Rolls-Royce, a Bentley, and even a Maybach. And that is insane for Vietnam. And according to Asia Briefing magazine, super rich Vietnamese have also ordered 10 of the 50 Mercedes Maybach S600 series, priced at 9.6 billion. The manufacturer plans to make in 2015 for the global market. I do not know where all this money is coming from.
That's one thing. And second thing is, it looks like Vietnam has a huge gap between the super rich Vietnamese and the very, very poor Vietnamese. And then we're focusing on the spending expenditure. Of course, Vietnam has one of the biggest honor when it comes to luxury goods. And I guess it's also because of all this media influence. And Vietnam has the sort of highest internet usage when it comes to the technology as well. So that also shows that how Vietnamese love to spend their money on.
I think it goes back to the whole lifestyle, like you mentioned, the kind of exposure that they get, the influences from other countries as well, the fact that they don't want to lose out. If someone has like a really cool, expensive handbag, you want to get it too, whether or not you can afford it. And I think that's the mindset that Vietnam is operating. But of course, we're not talking about everybody in Vietnam. Not everyone can afford a Bugatti or a Rolls Royce. We're talking about that privileged lot, like you mentioned. There is a huge gap between the rich and the poor, and over here, of course, we're focusing on the rich. And I mean, it's fine if they want to spend their money and all this, but at the same time, when we look at the other side of Vietnam, what is happening to those people, and how are they surviving, and how is their wage like, and what is being done about that as well.
Very true. So we'll take another short break, and when we come back, we'll bring the news on the social and cultural side of Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to Drian ASEAN. You're with Grace.
And this is Gowri.
And we are still at ASEAN Dailies, where we deliver news from Southeast Asia. Well, this news that we want to discuss is pretty sad.
We don't really want to discuss it, but we don't have a choice.
Exactly. So we're talking about the Borneo orangutan. And then... Oh, it's so sad.
Okay, I got this. We have a Borneo orangutan who died with 40 pellets found in her body. And an X-ray result actually showed that 10 pellets were in the head, 8 pellets in the left leg and pelvis, 18 pellets in the right leg and pelvis, as well as 6 pellets in the chest and right hand. You're right, I can't do this.
It's quite the orangutan was in the critical condition, of course. And it's not so sure how the Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation or the whole services do take care of this particular species there. But the case is the latest example of one of the critically endangered primates being killed by humans. And also orangutans are faced with extinction, of course, from poaching and also rapid destruction of their forest habitat, and are driven largely by land clearance for palm oil and paper plantations.
And this also added a long list of conflict between the industry and wildlife, as well as the practice of nature exploitation. The news said, urging Indonesian government to take a real action to protect the primates. And they are also looking to get a real commitment and action from the government, as well as the private sector when it comes to protecting these orangutans.
And that this is very necessary because I mean, we've been talking about all those animal species, endangered animals particularly, and it is necessary because if they just go away, it will disrupt the whole ecosystem, and then that will definitely and eventually affect human beings after all. Because even though we are at the top of the chain, it is really important to maintain and sustain this species, and they are there for a reason. And because of human beings, they get killed. Because of human beings, they disappeared, and this is very saddening. So, and also apparently orangutans are native to the pretty large island of Borneo, which is shared among Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brunei as well.
And it's always a tricky thing when it comes to finding a balance between development and trying to maintain the balance of nature. I mean, of course, on one hand, they're trying to clear lands and trying to have more plantations, and this is, of course, in turn good for the economy. But at the same time, they're losing out on all these different species of animals and even some floras as well. And I think what's very important is for them to find that balance between these two. And if they really have to clear the lands for palm oil and paper plantations, and then make sure there is a proper sanctuary or something where they can place these animals so they don't risk their extinction.
Correct.
And they still have a habitat to live in.
Correct. Well, let's move on to something brighter news then. Well, during ASEAN, we did cover the press conference of this amazing person, and also indeed the performance was just yesterday. So apparently UNESCO's national living treasure of the Alim Qasimov, he performed in Kuala Lumpur.
And he has also been declared a living national treasure of Azerbaijan. How is that for a title? And he's, of course, a Mugham singer who is critically acclaimed by all over the world, and especially for his rootedness in the Mugham tradition. And sticking to his mastery of improvisation, he, along with his daughter, Farhana Qasimov, and his ensemble, will be performing. And well, of course, the performance happened just last
yesterday.
night.
Yes.
Right. And this was supported by the Embassy of the Republic of Azerbaijan in Malaysia, where they also had a press conference, and he sort of explained that this is his first time in Malaysia, and he will be trying to introduce the whole element of Mugham to the Malaysian audience.
Right. And then he is very well known as an artist of the supreme versatility, and Qasimov was awarded the International Music Council UNESCO Music Prize, one of the highest international accolades of music in 1999. So he's got a very huge profile when it comes to his career in music, and it is something that people shouldn't miss his performance throughout this Kuala Lumpur festival.
Right. Of course, this is part of diversity, which is happening at the moment, and it will be happening throughout the whole month for all of you art lovers.
So, don't miss out all those events that has been happening under diversity. Do check out their websites, and also there will be more updates from our side as well. So do stay tuned with Adriana ASEAN. So that's it for our ASEAN Daily News. Look for us on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And we also do have our website, DurianASEAN.com.
And of course, you can also download our very own Durian ASEAN app.
Yep.
And as always, listen to us on the website on www.durianasean.com.